Comes to a track where pole sitter has won 5 of the last 6 Canadian Grand Prix. In fact, you have to go back to just Sebastian Vettel in 2016 to be the only person who hasn't been on pole who's led the first lap at the Canadian Grand Prix in the last 14 races here. So he's got a great advantage, but he's got that...
which can soon loosen the rear tyres off if you put too much steering angle in.
Here we go then, time for the Canadian Grand Prix. It's lights out and away we go. Verstappen, excellent off the line, as is Lewis Hamilton. He's already alongside and ahead of Fernando Alonso. Verstappen, then Hamilton, then Alonso. Russell in 4th. Nico Hülkenberg under pressure from Esteban Ocon. The two McLarens giving each other plenty of space as Oscar Piastri stays ahead of Lando Norris. That was a super getaway from Verstappen and from Hamilton. Fernando didn't get the reaction he wanted, and all through the first 4 or 5 corners, it looks to be pretty steady.
I think Verstappen will be happier to see a Mercedes in his mirrors right now than an Aston Martin, snaking around, trying to get the power down. And they've been pretty well behaved through these first few corners, and away they go then, down towards turns 8.
That's a super start from Charles Leclerc, not so from Carlos Sainz. Perez already ahead of him, but Sainz is trying to sort that out. As into the chicane we go. Is there room for Carlos Sainz? Just, but he has to go over the curb. That loses momentum. Perez is ready to pick up the place and get it back again. Ferrari battling Red Bull as we head now down to the hairpin, round the outside. Sainz tries to go. There's no way of getting past there. Perez has got that place back. He's 11th. Leclerc in 9th, getting past Albon and his teammate off the line.
That's a big overtake for Sergio Perez. No drag reduction system, rear wing open for 2 laps, of course, after the start.
But he's coming back at him again, and Carlos Sainz has got the place back and into the wall. Goes the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. He comes back out onto the track, goes the right way according to the guidelines, but that was almost a very, very race-ending moment for Kevin Magnussen, who's under pressure now from Valtteri Bottas.
Magnussen did very well there. He had a nice gap to break into that suddenly disappeared in front of him, and he had to take to the grass. Not his fault. He did a good job of saving a big accident there for 2 cars.
And that important overtake for Sergio Perez undone down the back straight. Carlos Sainz is back ahead of him. The gap out in front, 1.1 seconds now. Verstappen over Hamilton, and Alonso already dropping back a bit. 3rd for Aston Martin. Russell 4th, Ocon 5th, and Hülkenberg losing a place to Ocon on the opening lap, runs in 6th place.
And Piastri of the 2 McLaren drivers in 7th and 8th leads Norris through the opening phase of the start. It looked to me as if Fernando Alonso's reaction was spot on. The car just didn't really get up and running from 2nd on the grid.
Here comes Charles Leclerc closing in on Lando Norris ahead of him. No chance of an overtake down at the hairpin, but now you've got that very, very long back straight, even with no DRS on this particular lap, where the Ferrari could pick up a very nice slipstream. Already going through the final chicane is Max Verstappen. We see Lando Norris and under pressure a little bit from Charles Leclerc, but holding his own, the McLaren against the Ferrari. These are important stages for Charles Leclerc. Ferrari believe they're racing Mercedes today, but they say they have to get these overtakes done quickly. They can't afford to clear everyone up to Esteban Ocon and be about 15 seconds behind. Then their race is over.
Alex Albon said to me on the grid, didn't he? Yeah, I think the Ferraris we pass us pretty quickly. He's in the middle of them at the moment and holding his own for Williams in 10th.
Let's see that race start then. The lights go out and Alonso does get away okay, but then in that second phase, Hamilton is already past it.
Yeah, I don't know, he must have sort of bogged down slightly, or got maybe almost into anti-stall by the looks of it for Fernando Alonso. It just didn't get away. Then George Russell's trying to go around the outside of him, but that's too much to try that on the first lap into turn 3, and he sensibly falls back.
Sergio Perez starting 12th on the grid, already alongside Carlos Sainz. See the Williams there of Alex Albon trying to fend off Charles Leclerc, but to no avail as Leclerc will slide past going around turn 2. Look at the traction the Ferrari had compared to the Williams there. Just breezed past him as he got the power down. It's only hovering around the 1.1 second margin. Hamilton very much living with him at the moment.
I think Max will be happy to keep that, as long as he keeps him outside the DRS zone of 1 second. I think Verstappen and Red Bull will be happy enough with that. So it's an interesting track. 3 of the 4 straights are available on DRS, drag reduction system. The rear wing opens like a letterbox that gains them.
Give me feedback on strategy, it's up.
So currently still plan A. So we just need to stay with Alonso. Let's not let him get away from us.
And the detection point. Oh, look at that. That's a big hit against the wall in turn 4 for Fernando Alonso. And now the suspension's pretty tough. If the wheel rim withstood that, which it seems that it has, he's okay.
I don't think it's hurting his pace, though. Ted Kravitz, he's within DRS range of Lewis Hamilton.
Crucially, he is. Yes, he just dipped out of that 1 second drag reduction system range. And it's working better this race with the upgrades for Aston Martin, the drag reduction system. They're gaining more with the upgrades they've got to this Aston Martin car of Alonso than they had before. And so Alonso is on the hunt to Hamilton, trying to chase with him, maybe pushing too hard, clonking the wall, but Russell isn't able to get close to Alonso from behind. So neither Mercedes with DRS, Alonso does have DRS.
Lewis Hamilton, 8 years old, Fernando Alonso, 41 years old, and 1/100th of a second better reaction off the line for Lewis Hamilton.
So the DRS detection point is here. And then you get it, as I said, 3 of the 4 straights have it, but the next 2 very long straights, this one all the way down to the final chicane, and then the pit straight, are connected, they're linked. So 1 detection point very early on, and then 2 doses of DRS. So you can even overtake somebody into that final chicane and still have DRS on the way out.
Fernando thought about it, had a little look, realised there was nothing doing, tucked back in behind Lewis once again. He'll try into turn 1 as we're on board with Charles Leclerc now. Lando Norris still ahead of him and proving quite a stubborn obstacle for the Ferrari to try and get past.
I thought he might be struggling to get through the exit there. He went in really deep and fast, did Leclerc, but he scooped it up in the middle of the chicane.
Lap 6 of the Canadian Grand Prix, nearly 2 seconds the advantage from Max Verstappen out in front. And at Sky Race Control this afternoon, hello, Karun Chandok.
Yeah, hello, Crofty. Afternoon, everyone listening at home. Nothing on the radio for Fernando Alonso in terms of damage, so he seems to have got away with that contact with the wall. They're just giving him advice on brake balance and keeping him abreast of the gaps. He's the only one in that little sandwich of Mercedes and Aston Martin with DRS, so yeah, no issues at the moment.
Yuki Tsunoda becoming a little bit detached from the rest of the field in the early stages. Whether he's had a moment and gone off or not, I'm not quite sure. He might have come into the pits as well. Yes, he has. He's actually come into pit at the end of the first lap, stick the hard compound tyre on, which is why he is running a long, long way off the pace.
And it gives him then some free air for a while, doesn't it, to try to catch the pack up while they're squabbling.
Here comes Fernando again. How's this squabble with Lewis Hamilton going to end up? Still behind him as they go through the final chicane. And this next straight doesn't quite seem long enough for Fernando Alonso to get on terms. The Mercedes seems to have a bit of better traction getting out of that chicane.
Yeah, well, you'll always be on the throttle at least a car length ahead of the driver behind you, of course. But you do get that concertina effect.
I think tires are more vulnerable than FP2.
Because the track is what we call green. Doesn't look very green, does it? But it's been washed heavily yesterday. Very little support racing here on slick tyres. No F2, no F3, no Porsche Super Cup. So this track, the Formula 1 cars are now preparing it once again, almost as if we started on a Friday.
And Haas consistently this season have looked vulnerable in the opening stages of a race, struggling with their rear tyres. I wonder if that is a contributing factor to why we now see Oscar Piastri ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. He's got that overtake done and up into 6th.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear that Hülkenberg sort of outperformed where the car should be. Somebody has got a problem.
Logan Sargent has got a problem. He's stationary just out of turn 6.
Stop the car, park next to marshal post, critical message.
So that sounds like there's a problem with the engine that they just had to stop right away.
If he's critically on the outside of turn 6,
Here goes the
parked up.
McLaren behind Nico Hülkenberg, and it's Lando Norris is going wheel to wheel, or trying to, with Nico Hülkenberg. Can't quite get it done into that final chicane. There's the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc waiting to pick up the pieces. Norris is getting a decent slipstream down the straight here. Is there a move on down into turn one? Not quite. Behind him, that concertina effect you were talking about, as they all slow down for a virtual safety car now. Races annulled, neutralised as it were. Everyone drives to 40% of their normal race time.
Yeah, I started to say, if he's stranded on the outside of turn 6, they'll have to use the virtual or the actual safety car, but they're getting it out of the way behind into that safety road very quickly. So we'll be up and running again in the next 20-30 seconds.
Yeah, definitely the right call, the virtual safety car, rather than bunching all the pack up behind Bernd Maylander, because this is a very, very quick extraction from the racetrack itself from the marshals. The virtual safety car is ending as we see the end of Logan Sargent in this race, and the end of his 100% finishing record for 2023.
He did his best to get it out of the way, but short of having a handbrake and spinning it around, that's as good as he's going to do.
Yeah, he put it right by the escape road. The marshals have wheeled it out the way. There's Verstappen's lead, a lot closer behind, isn't it? Hamilton and Alonso. Alonso's moving out to try and get some cooler air, I think, running behind Hamilton here. Overtake wasn't quite on, but let's see it once again down the main straight, while we also look at Charles Leclerc. Leclerc gaining on Lando Norris, still can't quite get past. DRS enabled once more.
Yeah, it's not the same as the main safety car then. DRS is enabled straight away. I imagine Mercedes will be looking and wondering just how and why the lead's gone up to 3 seconds during the virtual safety car period. Did Max react more quickly when it ended, or was he pushing the limits harder, or whatever? But that's a healthy lead he's now got.
On board with Charles Leclerc, who is becoming increasingly frustrated, I think, in this battle. And look, there's a real train forming behind Nico Hülkenberg in 7th, and that train includes Pierre Gasly on the soft tyre, who I thought might have pitted behind that virtual safety car, but decided to stay out. That safety car period didn't last long.
And Leclerc's already being told to lift and coast to cool the brakes. Now, this is a really tough circuit. Anything that's got a lot of traction and a lot of braking is hard, of course, on the brakes and the fuel consumption. There's a lot of acceleration and deceleration here, especially when you've got your 100 kilograms of fuel on board at the start.
We haven't really mentioned, as Fernando Alonso gets so close to the wall there, we haven't really mentioned George Russell much. But look how he's come into this fight. Fernando Alonso being held up a bit after losing a place to Lewis Hamilton at the start. Well, George Russell is now right on the tail of that Aston Martin. Alonso starting to use his mirrors as much as he is looking ahead of him. And this is Oscar Piastri on Nico Hülkenberg. It was down into turn 1, where he got the cheers from the crowd, and he got 6th place at the expense of the Haas.
Yeah, again, you get the double dose of DRS, so that helps you down the pit straight. And there is George Russell, but he just struggling at this stage to hang on a little bit, isn't he, to Hamilton and Alonso? But he's certainly closed some of the gap down in the virtual safety car. And I think how you go into that and how close you keep to the limit you're allowed during the speed limit you're allowed during the safety car, and then how quickly you re-accelerate, and exactly where you are on the track when it's thrown and when it ends also matters.
Now this might be interesting. DRS zone, but no DRS for Fernando Alonso. There is DRS for George Russell. Alonso had gone beyond that 1 second by the time they got to the detection point. So Fernando Alonso now hasn't got the benefit of an extra 11 miles an hour down the straight to keep as close as he can to Lewis Hamilton, and more crucially for him, to stay ahead of George Russell. Karun, down to you.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton's been complaining that the tyres are already super hot, and there's a lot of conversations about tyre strategies, and everyone complaining, Crofty, like we heard from Verstappen earlier, as the first of the cars has come into the pits. Pierre Gasly on the softs already.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, 11 laps in, Pierre Gasly's soft tyres have got a little bit too hot. So he makes that stop. Second driver to come into the pits, because Yuki Tsunoda did at the end of the first lap, but he started at 19th, so unsurprising. But he wants to run in a bit of free air. Bit of a slow stop, I'm told, for Pierre Gasly, which won't help him as he tries to make his way back through the field a bit.
So once again, Ferrari sort of like in Barcelona with Leclerc, not sort of steaming through the pack as quickly as we thought they could and should. Especially, you know, when we had the long runs on the dry running on Friday, they looked pretty much as fast as Red Bull on the longer runs.
Look at this. This is a proper DRS train from Nico Hülkenberg in 7th all the way to Nick de Vries in 16th.
I think I hit a bird.
Oh, the seagulls are back. Remember the seagulls that Sebastian Vettel was talking about with Lewis Hamilton a few years ago in the middle of the track? They tend to gather down at turn 1. Hülkenberg, does he go into the pits? Yes, he does, just before he was about to be overtaken by Lando Norris. Hülkenberg's tyres have had enough. Norris is now free. Charles Leclerc's thinking, I'd quite like to be a bit more free. As we head down towards turn 1, Norris just stays ahead of the Ferrari. Into the pits too comes Lance Stroll and Nick de Vries. That DRS train was holding them up, so they've decided to switch strategy at Aston Martin and AlphaTauri.
I've had that there many a time when you're fighting with somebody else and they suddenly take to the pit lane. They're doing 100 miles an hour more than you in the braking zone, and it can draw you into the corner. It can just take away your reference points, and I think that's what happened there to Lando Norris a little bit, which is what put Leclerc on his tail.
Now this is George Russell, and he's hit the wall.
Yeah.
And you can see the damage in the distance. George Russell could be out of this race. He's certainly going to have to try and limp home with his car missing part of his front wing. We've got a full safety car here in Canada. That is going to be very, very difficult for George Russell, and he's going to have to go a bit slower as he reaches the hairpin, and the leader, Max Verstappen, decides now is a good time to pit.
They'll put the hard compound tyres on that, I imagine. I think George Russell will be okay if he's just broken the wheel rim. But the reason we need the safety car is because of the debris on the racetrack.
Ted, down to you, they're all coming
Yeah,
in.
it's a perfect time to get the mediums off and put the hard tyres on. Lewis Hamilton followed Max Verstappen in. Fernando Alonso also followed them in as well. Esteban Ocon is pitting.
Oh,
Take it away.
Lewis Hamilton came out from his pit stop. The Aston Martin pit stop was 9/10 of a second faster, and Fernando Alonso, A, almost got ahead, and then B, more crucially, almost ran into Lewis Hamilton. That might get looked at, I think, Martin.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. We'll have to watch it again to see just how close it was. But it was the perfect time for them. I'm sure they'd probably like to have gone a little bit longer, actually.
Now, this is what happened to George Russell. It's the exit of the chicane.
He's gone deep.
Oh,
Yeah.
George.
Oh, he hit the front as well. So what happened is he got too deep into the first part of the chicane, glanced the sausage curb, and that put him... That was a big hit, actually, wasn't it? Yeah. That wasn't just too much throttle through the exit. That was a proper accident.
I'm out, guys, sorry.
Copy.
Sorry.
Well, he says he's out. Ted Kravitz, if we can go down to you, he's into the pits. Well, we'll go down to you in 2 seconds, because this is the moment where Hamilton came out. Well, Alonso is definitely having to avoid him.
Caution, caution. You're just ahead, just ahead.
Great job at the stop, guys.
I have to brake on the pit.
You had to brake there, yeah, it looked pretty dangerous to me.
Fernando got busy on the steering wheel, but I think there's no doubt about that. That's an unsafe release.
Right, so they're expecting the damage. This is going to be a lengthier pit stop, Ted Kravitz, while they change that front wing.
It was minimum front wing, and I think there's damage to the front axle as well. It smelt of brake burning as it came in, and now they're messing around the back of the car as well all the time. George slipping away, but yeah, no Ferraris pitting, Crofty.
No.
Ferrari has stayed out. Got how much track position have they got?
4th Leclerc, 5th Sainz, 6th Perez now.
A bit.
So the important thing for George Russell is that he doesn't get lapped, and he won't get lapped because Verstappen's just coming round the last corner, so he stays on the lead lap if he can keep 4 wheels on his wagon.
He still has to drive to a delta time, which is not race round the track as fast as you possibly can, George, but I'm sure he won't want to be doing that. They want to make sure that car is physically capable, as Toto Wolff has a look at the replay, and mirrors the steering angle, I think, of either George Russell or Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. This is Lando Norris and the Williams of Alex Albon, and whilst race control has noted a possible unsafe release for Hamilton and Alonso, they might have a little look at this one. Lando Norris with Alex Albon.
Norris tried to stay left and yield a car's width on the outside, but then had to swerve around the Ferrari pit crew.
So, Bernd Mailander in the safety car has picked up the race leader, Max Verstappen. We're 50 years of the safety car in Formula One, unlike the first year, Canadian Grand Prix 1973. Bernd Mailander has picked up the correct leader of this race. And we were joking the other day that at the age of 52, technically Bernd Mailander is now the oldest person to lead a Grand Prix. Not sure it's a record he wants or is particularly proud of, but, you know, happy birthday for the other week, Bernd.
And by the way, a fine racing driver in his day as well. You'll not be surprised to hear. So, yeah, this has really worked out nicely for them at the front, hasn't it?
And just feedback on the car.
It's a bit bent, but it's okay.
I'm not surprised. George Russell would have been at what speed when he hit the wall there? Round about 80 miles an hour.
It was the angle as much as anything, wasn't it? Because he glanced the curb, he then sort of approached the wall at best part of 90 degrees until he could turn it at the last moment. But I'd be surprised if the steering wheel's pointing, you know, if it's nice and square in front of him.
Where's the damage come from?
That is off George's car, we believe.
So Lewis Hamilton getting fed the information from Pete Bonnet, his race engineer. You say, Martin, the safety cars worked out lovely for the top three. Verstappen, Hamilton and Alonso all managed to come into the pits. Behind them, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez and Kevin Magnussen didn't pit. Are you surprised that one of the Ferraris at least didn't pit? Because they're on the medium tyres compared to Perez on the hard.
Yes, I am. They've decided not to use that. They obviously think they've got enough pace with some clear air to gap the midfield and get their pit stop later on. But
Rear brakes seem to be really hot.
For the safety car, as did Lance Stroll, who's back down to 16th again.
yeah, unlucky for Hulkenberg, because that means it's a full cost 19-second stop for him, isn't it? Whereas the others are stopping while the pack's going much more slowly. So you halve the cost of a pit stop at that point. So very unlucky. He got lucky with the red flag yesterday, Hulkenberg. Unlucky there.
Comments from Tsunoda regarding the hards. Warm-up was worse than expected, around 1 second, so we are expecting the cars in front to struggle initially.
But the problem is they've got to, you know, they're on new eyes. They've got to pass them to be able to use, you know, what Ferrari have done, and Perez with Red Bull, is they've gone for track position. They're all stuck in that DRS train, as we call it, where everybody's got DRS, so nobody's got too much of an advantage, and they can't get past the driver at the front. So they've elected to take track position instead of fresh tyres, but now they've really got to get on with it.
What's the phrase Max Verstappen uses when he wins a race? Simply lovely? I think the safety car might be simply lovely for his teammate Sergio Perez here, because he can go longer than the two Ferraris. He's on the hard tyre, the two Ferraris on the medium, and that then will put him right in contention with Fernando Alonso. He started 12th on the grids, and when the Ferraris pit, well, he'll be up into 4th place. He probably couldn't have wished, even though he made the overtake on Sainz and then lost the place back again, he couldn't have wished for a perfect bit of safety car timing here.
It certainly plays more into his hands, doesn't it, on those tyres, as you point out.
Now, the race control have noted Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen for overtaking under the safety car. Not been passed to the stewards as yet. This is a replay of lap 1, and the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap as we look at the exploits of Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez on lap 1. Sainz thought he got that move done, but he went over the curb. That took him too deep into the exit, and the place swapping back again at the hairpin. Perez making the overtake, and here's Carlos Sainz getting past Sergio Perez. It's rare you see a Ferrari out dragging a Red Bull down the straight.
Yeah, no DRS involved.
Yeah.
Sainz obviously used his battery in an attacking mode, and of course he had a good slipstream from the back of the Red Bull in the first half of the straight. That's how he got that place back.
So, everyone has pitted, bar Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez and Kevin Magnussen, and Valtteri Bottas. And Bernd Mailander is speeding his way back towards the pits, while Max Verstappen backs up the pack a little bit and prepares for a safety car restart. Max Verstappen, who has led the last 169 laps in Formula One, and has led the last 15 laps without any threat of overtake whatsoever, now has Lewis Hamilton right behind him. Right behind Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso on the medium tyre behind these two, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. And when does Max Verstappen go? Round about now, I think, as they enter the...
So it's officially been looked at by the FIA in terms of car positioning. Again, I'll let you know if there's any update.
Thank you.
We're staying in this position and we're carrying on from here. The 5 cars in front haven't stopped.
Yeah, but that's not fair. I'm going to stay behind now.
It's under investigation for overtaking under the safety car, so they could well get penalties. So okay, mate, head down.
Lando, for the first lap, it's the same rules of engagement as we had on lap 1 of the race.
Norris does get a penalty. His was slightly different to the other one they're looking at, but they won't want, if he is going to take a penalty, they'll be keen he doesn't then hold Piastri up in any way, shape or form, but they don't need to worry about that until they find out where they stand with penalties.
Yeah, they are investigating now, the stewards. Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton's moment and Lando Norris's moment with Alex Albon. This is where Lando Norris got past his teammate Oscar Piastri into the hairpin, under braking, spider gap, went for it. What do they say? Stamp the envelope and send it. That Daniel Ricciardo's words. He might be saying something just like that on the grandstand watch-along currently with Will Arnett, the comedian. If you press your red button, you can hear what those two gentlemen are saying, sat on their sofa this afternoon.
Yeah, well, that was just experience there from Lando Norris in terms of, you know, he knows where to look out while everybody else just getting up to speed. Oscar, of course, new to Formula One, and he knows Norris knew he'd be cautious in that braking zone.
1.5 seconds, the gap out in front. Let's look at Valtteri Bottas here, closing in on Kevin Magnussen. Nothing doing for Bottas to try and get past. Ted Kravitz, let's head down to you in the pit lane.
Yeah, I'm just kind of expecting, I mean, as the stewards this weekend have shown, you cough and you get a penalty for anything, really, this weekend.
You're still a bit sore about that Nico Hulkenberg penalty, aren't you?
I am. Me and millions of other people, Crofty. But anyway, yes, I know it's an open shut case. No,
sadly.
Okay, yeah, so if we're expecting an unsafe release penalty for Hamilton, it looks like at Alpine they've actually sorted themselves out. It was, I believe, on the restart whether Ocon got past Bottas or passed him before the line as you come out of the pit, as Ocon was coming out of the pit lane. Bottas, of course, was still on track, but I think Alpine have rectified that and let Bottas take that P8 back.
They have. Bottas ahead of Esteban Ocon, so maybe no need for the stewards to get involved there. DRS is now enabled. We look at Laurent Mekies, deputy team principal at Ferrari. When are they going to bring their drivers in? Charles Leclerc hasn't got DRS, Carlos Sainz has, and he's gaining on his teammate, isn't he? Towards the end of the straight. Behind them comes Kevin Magnussen, and Valtteri Bottas under pressure, and Bottas conceding a place there to Esteban Ocon, as through the chicane goes Oscar Piastri. All happening at that final chicane. Piastri now slots in behind Alex Albon. He's back in 12th place now.
Yeah, he lost the slot there, didn't he, to the Williams of Albon. It's good that they've got that sort of get-out-of-jail-free card down there. They have to do a bit of a slalom, take some pain, keeps the cars in the race. 19 of the 20 cars still running, amazingly, one of them being George Russell.
Yeah, he's running plumb last at the moment, but is still going. Let's just have a look here. The McLaren and the Williams, ahead of those was the Alpine getting ahead of the Alfa Romeo, and that's where Oscar Piastri outbraked himself and had to take to the run.
Yeah, he was down the inside. It's more slippery there, but also as soon as you put any steering lock in whatsoever, you will lock the inside wheel, front wheel.
Okay, Kev, we need to drop a place back behind Ocon. We need to drop back behind Ocon. So safety car, pit lane, exit, infringement.
Okay.
And we absolutely saw that with Esteban Ocon now ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Very nicely done, but can Magnussen now hold on to what is currently 8th place? Because Valtteri Bottas is catching him and passing him before they get into the chicane. Magnussen is down into 9th place. Neat little move there from Valtteri Bottas as we go on board with Lando Norris in the McLaren. Norris has seen Magnussen getting overtaken into the chicane. He now fancies a go at Magnussen himself, and Lando Norris has done that, going into turn 1. Very nicely done. Lando Norris up in the 9th place.
Yeah, it's super few laps from Lando Norris, isn't it? Really aggressive, committed, and controlled at the same time.
So, lap 21 of 70. Max Verstappen leads this race, 2 seconds the gap between himself and Lewis Hamilton. George Russell is still running down in 19th. Last Brit to be running last, I think, here at this stage was Jenson Button in 2011. Went on and won the race after colliding with Hamilton and Alonso that day. And Logan Sargent is the only retirement in the race so far. And once again, we've got a big DRS train, like one of those long trains that rumble their way across the length of Canada and over to the west coast. Does seem almost as long as that. There's quite a few cars involved. Look how Alonso has caught up with Hamilton. Look how Sainz with DRS has caught up with Charles Leclerc. Look how Sergio Perez is just biding his time and playing the long game. And look how Alex Albon is making a move on Kevin Magnussen and having to hold station going into that final chicane.
So this is sensible from the stewards. You know, cars were overtaking in what were safety car conditions on the very, very long pit exit. It's like, right, hand them all back and get on your way. We're not going to throw any penalties at you. And they've all done that sensibly. And that for me, makes a lot of sense all round.
Fascinating battles currently out there, one of which is Fernando Alonso. If you watch on board, you might want to stick with him for a bit, because he is getting a little bit closer, bit by bit, every lap to Hamilton.
It looks to me like Alonso's using Hamilton as like a tow rope, basically, DRSing it down the straights, nursing his tyres in the corner. We're nowhere near half distance, so they're going to get those hard compound tyres all the way to the end. So I'm pretty sure Fernando at this point is thinking 20, 30 laps ahead.
Well, just don't make too many aggressive moves, don't take too much out of the tyres, you'll get them back in the end. But look, down the straight, extra 11 miles an hour on that Aston Martin with DRS. He doesn't want to be behind Hamilton for much longer. He is not behind Hamilton, as out of the final chicane they go. Fernando Alonso is up into 2nd place, and he's still got DRS to try and move away from Hamilton, who's got a good slipstream and is sticking right with him. This could be a brilliant scrap for the next few laps, because Hamilton's not going to give up 2nd place without trying to fight back, and he's in a brilliant position by the time we get to the next DRS zone to try and get that 2nd place back.
It's great to see these two at it, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Combined age of what, nearly 80 years old?
41 and 38, 79, Martin. I could just about do it. To be honest, now Alonso's free. He has moved away in the last few corners. The Aston Martin's still pretty good in the slow speed corners. But it's a bit faster, they think, down the straights. It's a little less draggy. And whilst that was happening, this move from Alex Albon on Kevin Magnussen almost came off. He had to make an extra chicane and then lost another place to the McLaren of Oscar Piastri.
Which is how he gained that place in the first instance, isn't it, with Piastri doing the same thing. But you've got to be committed. You can't leave 2 or 3 metres on the table.
Yeah, I feel I have a bit of place here.
Now, he's certainly got DRS behind his teammate. He thinks that Ferrari should be swapping the places, I think, Carlos Sainz. To be fair, in the dry on Friday, he looked like he did have a bit of pace over his teammate. As the stewards decide, no further action Lewis Hamilton for the unsafe release. No further action for Lando Norris for the unsafe release.
Lucky escape for the certainly for Lewis there, for the pair of them. On we go. No penalties then. We've got a very lenient phase of the race from the stewards.
Absolutely. They decided that it would be unfair to penalise the drivers at this particular stage. So onwards then, Fernando Alonso has moved more than a second ahead, hasn't he, of Lewis Hamilton. Has got that done at the overtake and is lapping within about 1/10 of a second of Max Verstappen, who may or may not be managing his tyres somewhat, because he just wants to keep it nice and under control, and there's no need to extend his advantage any more at the moment than the 3 seconds that he currently has over the Spanish driver down at Aston Martin. We're watching Valtteri Bottas, 8th currently, ahead of Lando Norris. How fast is that Alfa Romeo, I wonder, down the straight? Alfa Romeo for Valtteri Bottas, that's seen him finish 19th and 11th and 13th and then 18th in the last 4 races, but does look a little more competitive this weekend. In the dry on Friday, you know, Valtteri Bottas was up there in the top 10.
Yeah.
Oh, as Oscar Piastri for one moment thinks that I could be in the points here, you know. And look how Kevin Magnussen's starting to struggle coming out of that chicane. Picking up a great slipstream is Oscar Piastri, who's back up into the top 10 once more, and that looked very easy indeed. Once again, the Haas struggling with its tyres come race day. It's just falling away far too often.
Now, McLaren have got a lot of upgrades coming in over the next 3 races, particularly in Austria next time out, but I must say, it's showing better race pace than perhaps we expected, even in this particular design.
Race control have noted Lando Norris for driving unnecessarily slowly. I assume that's behind the safety car, not behind Valtteri Bottas. We can go to Sky Race Control. Karun Chandok.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc has been told that he won't be attacked by Carlos Sainz, so Carlos's request has fallen on deaf ears there. He's got to sit tight.
And Charles, we want a clean and fast stint. Sainz will not attack you.
See, and Ferrari, Martin, running different strategies with their drivers today, despite starting on the same tyre.
Yeah, I know they do things in continental Europe differently, but wouldn't you call him Carlos? Yeah, you know, that's what just struck me about that message. But they do tend to use surnames more than us Brits do.
Ted, down to you.
I think Ferrari have got bigger fish to fry, Crofty, with what's going on with their strategy. I mean, I know Sainz is saying, look, I'm quicker than Charles at the moment, or Carlos is saying, I'm quicker than Leclerc at the moment, but, you know, can you let me through? He's since backed off, hasn't he, Sainz? Was about half a second behind Leclerc, has now backed off to another second and a half. But if they pit now, you need about 19, 20 seconds to do a pit stop. So they're going to come back out 50. And then, yes, they could go to the end of the race, but potentially so could everybody else on the hard tyre. So really, Ferrari needs something special now to save their afternoon. I'm thinking safety car, or it's looking a bit dangerous, really.
If they don't get a safety car, Ted, what they're going to need, Martin, is to keep on those medium tyres for at least another, what, 10 laps or so?
Yeah, I mean, have they missed the window? We're going to be hearing and reading a lot about that if they have, in terms of, you know, with that safety car opportunity. Perez struggling to hang on to them, isn't he?
He's either struggling to hang on, or he's doing some tyre management and thinking, right, I'm just going to keep this nice and easy because I'm on a comfortable one-stopper here and I can clear the 2 Ferraris. Alex Albon getting interested in Kevin Magnussen again. I can clear the 2 Ferraris when they pit, and then I've got plenty of fresh tyre to go after Lewis Hamilton. Albon's coming back for a bit more here with Kevin Magnussen, who's already been passed by Lando Norris going into turn 1, but he's not been passed by Alex Albon on that occasion.
Magnussen had DRS available to him as well. That's why it wasn't a slam dunk pass down the pit straight. But you'd have to say that Williams does look a much better car in that spec that Albon's got for the weekend.
So on the 2 Ferraris then, whilst Leclerc and Sainz picked up 6 places from where they started, that position might not look quite as attractive if they have to pit within the next 10 laps or so. Sergio Perez on the hard tyre, which can go to lap 50 and still get a decent performance, probably in a healthier situation here, because he's on the hard tyre, not on the medium. Valtteri Bottas is also yet to pit. He's picked up 6 places. Yuki Tsunoda pitted early on. Hulkenberg has lost 10 places by the safety car coming out at the wrong time for him. George Russell's lost 15 places by hitting the wall and having to take a lengthy pit stop as Bottas under pressure from Lando Norris into the final chicane. Let's look back to see where Alex Albon is, behind Kevin Magnussen again. And there's Nico Hulkenberg. Oh dear, pushing Lance Stroll onto the grass, but I think Stroll was coming into the pits once more for what is his second stop in the race.
Well, yes, he absolutely was expected, wasn't he? And nearly didn't make it into the pit lane. Lovely quick stop from Aston Martin there. And when Norris being noted for driving unnecessarily slowly, I wonder under the safety car whether he backed up a bit for a double stack pit stop. They were in line astern, weren't they, at McLaren with his teammate Piastri at that time. So you're not allowed to hold the pack up. You can just ease a bit of space though.
I'm assuming Lance Stroll pitting for a second time, that's Aston Martin getting him into some clean air out of that DRS train that he was rather stuck in, where all the cars have got DRS and they're just holding station, and they're saying, right, go to the end of the race, but you've got nice clean air for the next few laps or so in which to do the times that we need from you.
I have no grip on this tyre.
Yeah, copy that, Max.
Even though he's setting the pace out in front, Verstappen's still struggling a bit with grip, and he'd probably like a bit more.
Interesting though, isn't it? Because Alonso's just done the fastest lap of the Grand Prix as well.
I was about to say, there goes Alex Albon, finally getting past Kevin Magnussen, but he had to wait till he came out of the chicane to do it. And finally, Alex Albon has got his man and has moved up into 11th place. So well done him. Took a few laps to do it, and he finally managed to get it done. Any idea why we just had a yellow flag there?
No, nobody stopped out on track, so presumably somebody's looped it around and carried on. We'll get a replay, or maybe they just ran very wide.
So Verstappen setting, fast laps out in front.
And switch right, switch right.
Happy models. White box. Not yet.
Stay out, stay out.
Well, you can understand why Carlos Sainz doesn't want to necessarily pit just yet, because he would probably come out, let's have a look, behind Nico Hulkenberg and possibly Nick de Vries. He wants to carry on for a bit. This is Hulkenberg. As he was making his way and taking the racing line into that chicane, Lance Stroll was trying to come into the pits and approaching faster before putting on the limiter. By the way, 2.5 second stop for Lance Stroll to go with a 2.4 second stop that he got from his first pit stop. That's really neat work from the Aston Martin team to get a car service with all four wheels in under 2.5 seconds, twice with him.
I find it interesting that the Ferrari drivers quite often challenge the strategy or when they're going to come in the pits, and then quite often initially win the battle. They've always had a slightly unusual aspect there, haven't they, at Ferrari, where the driver can overrule the strategy from the pit wall.
Well, and I can understand it on this occasion. Just looking at the timing screens, Sainz would be coming out right in the middle of a DRS train, where other cars have got DRS, helping their pace, and not helping Carlos Sainz trying to get some overtaking done.
He doesn't know that, does he? He'll not know what's 20 seconds behind him, so it's a question of, he's saying, look, I've got loads of grip, I've got loads of pace left yet, let's stay out for a while. But interesting, there's that sort of lack of certainty.
The graphic there said Lewis Hamilton chasing Fernando Alonso.
I'm just losing grip with this tire now.
Yeah, okay, Max, I think we've got that message. Thank you, just head down.
You might not be the only one as well, because whilst you're still lapping in the 170. Anything Max Verstappen wants to verbally hit at him with. Anyway, talking of verbals, down to you, Ted Craven.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know I love that relationship between Max Verstappen and Gianpiero Lambiase, his engineer. You could pretty much say the worst thing in the world, couldn't you, to GP Lambiase, and he'd say, yeah, it's all right, don't worry, I get the picture. But I think that's authentic, that message that Max is losing grip. The thing is, everybody else is as well, and I'm just going to look at the times and the data as to whether everybody who stopped under that safety car for George Russell, Verstappen, Alonso, Hamilton particularly, can get to the end on the hard tyre. And my suspicions are that Lance Stroll pit stop, Crofty, I know what you're saying, that they wanted to get some free air, but he was going okay on that set of hard tyres, and he is now resumed plumb last, so I'm not sure that it is as easy. I'm kind of going with Max on this one. I think they might have to stop again, might well have to stop again, the top three.
Tell you who.
Generally, just rear end is pretty weak.
Grip is getting better as Max Verstappen driven through the graining, the slippery phase.
I think it's also, we've now had 33 laps of 19 cars laying down rubber in braking zones and particularly traction zones, which are critical here.
If he's gone through that graining phase and things have got a lot better, and he's now dropped into the 1:16 for his lap times, Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton have started to lose about 0.3 of a second each per lap. Are their tyres starting to grain up a bit, I wonder? Zhou Guanyu has pitted. Yuki Tsunoda is right behind Kevin Magnussen, going towards turn 1, and right behind Nick de Vries comes Pierre Gasly, who is probably the unluckiest man this weekend. Could have found himself in the top 10, potentially in qualifying, but it was impeded by Carlos Sainz, and he found himself out in Q1. Stewards have decided Lando Norris does need to be investigated for driving unnecessarily slowly. He's currently in the points, but I wonder if a steward's decision might affect Lando Norris's day. McLaren running both cars in the points at a track where they haven't scored since 2014. Kevin Magnussen finished 9th that day, Jenson Button finished 4th that day. And that was the last time McLaren came home with any points from Montreal.
Fernando Alonso back now in the 1:16s as well, so his times are yo-yoing around, but with a 5.3 second lead, 5.4 as it is now for Verstappen. They've got a lap in hand then. They can react a lap later to anything that Aston Martin or Mercedes decide to do.
George Russell running behind Pierre Gasly, I think moving to the right-hand side of the track to try and get some cooler air running through the side pods. They have got side pods now on that Mercedes car. Just noticed him in the background as into the pits comes Pierre Gasly for another stop. He was on the soft tyre at the start of this race. He's now made a second stop, and his team boss Otmar Safnauer can join us from the pit lane. Talk us through the strategy with Pierre Gasly. Why is now a good time for him to pit, Otmar?
Well, he was being held up, so we'd like to get him into a bit of free air to make him in a time up and maybe overtake some cars. He was kind of stuck behind de Vries.
Is that happening to a lot of cars at the moment? That DRS train is very long, isn't it?
It is, and it's difficult to brake, so the underlying pace is a little bit better, so if you have that, it's good to have him in free air.
With this green but cleaning up track, will the hard tyre go to the end of the race for many of these drivers, Omar?
Well, I can't speak for the other ones, but let's see what happens.
And what about Esteban Ocon? He's currently about 7 seconds behind Sergio Perez. Sort of a race do you expect him to have by the time the checker flag comes out?
Well, Sergio and a couple others in front of him haven't pitted yet, so if he can stay within that 7 seconds of Sergio, hopefully we'll beat him by the end.
That'll be a decent battle. Thanks ever so much, Otmar. We'll come back to you,
Thank you
in a while, because I can see Nick de Vries under braking, going wheel to wheel here with Kevin Magnussen. They tangle down at turn 1 and slipping through on the inside. And I'm sure saying thank you very much indeed, chaps, was George Russell, who's picked up a couple of places there. Magnussen struggling, de Vries is struggling, he outbrakes himself, and they both end up going down the runoff.
And it's not wide enough down there to spin it around. You're going to have to reverse out. You need the marshals to give you a clue as to what's coming along. And, that's a really difficult place to find yourself in a Formula One car. Now you're completely blinded, reversing back towards the traffic. Got enough lock there. That's a nice way of doing that in the Haas.
And the next car to make his way towards turn 3 will be the leader, Max Verstappen, by the way. This is rather reminiscent of Rue de Sainte Catherine on a Saturday night in Montreal. Two very expensive sports cars going no pace whatsoever and stuck in a cul-de-sac.
Ferrari there thinking there might be a safety car, get ready. But as they've managed to extricate themselves from the runoff area, then no safety car. That's why the Ferrari tyres were going back in.
So they tangled going into turn 1 here, and I wonder if that caused a bit of damage on Kevin Magnussen's Haas. Right there, bits flying off the car. George Russell slips by on the inside because Magnussen then was going very, very slowly approaching turn 3, and that de Vries then outbraked himself, and they both ended up going down a runoff and unable to avoid it.
Let's see why, whether they just were still squabbling when they got there. I mean, Magnussen's front wing took a fair old pounding, but it looks intact at this time. And, well, what that was de Vries locking up on the inside dirty line and just took Magnussen with him.
I wonder if, yeah, he did. They collided once again. I wonder if Magnussen braked a little bit early, actually, thinking, well, de Vries, I'll let him go here because I need to be turning right. Magnussen is now pitting. Lando Norris has just pitted and is running back down in 12. Magnussen comes in for a change of tyres, and I dare say they might inspect the car a little bit. But if they did, they didn't look at it for long. He was only there for 3 seconds. And race control have made a note of Nick de Vries and Kevin Magnussen's little tangle.
George Russell had a sizable accident. A long pit stop under the safety car, is now about to be in the World Championship points.
Ocon and Bottas have now pitted. Here comes Esteban Ocon. Mighty be with Sergio Perez by the end. Well, Perez has definitely got to stop because he hasn't yet. Ocon is pitting for a second time in this race. 2.5 seconds stationary for Esteban Ocon. He comes out in 10th place, still hanging on to a points position. Going to be tight with Valtteri Bottas as he makes his way onto the track just ahead of Lando Norris, who pitted a few moments ago. Stroll is right behind him. And Ted, what news have you got?
Yeah, so that was a nice stop from the Sauber crew for Valtteri Bottas. But then he's now, of course, started on the hard tyre. He's now put the medium tyre on. It's quite soft, this medium tyre, the second softest of all the range, and it's got to make it to the end of the race. So, yeah, good luck with that one, Valtteri. Although they're holding up on the Ferrari still.
And we're only just beyond Martin, half race distance here.
Yeah, Bottas held track position ahead of Lando Norris as well. But, you know, the Ferrari have managed to get 38 laps on the medium compound tyres, including full tanks of fuel.
Sergio Perez has come into the pits for the first time in this race, and he should come out behind this battle here. Alex Albon and the McLaren of Oscar Piastri that dashes off into the pits before Albon makes what surely would have been an overtake on him. Out of the pits comes Sergio Perez, 2.3 seconds, makes his way onto the racetrack behind Alex Albon, so he'll be down in 6th place. Piastri will make his way back out onto the pack, and he might come out behind Lance Stroll here, who you can just see going through your picture. You're on the inside, but even with that advantage, Piastri isn't going to get out ahead of Lance Stroll. And Lando Norris has got a 5-second time penalty for unsportsmanlike behaviour, which rather backs up, Martin Brundle, your theory as to why the stewards were looking at him.
Yeah, I think he was backing the pack up to build a gap for a double.
From Pete Bonington, we'd have just heard hammer time, yeah?
Yeah, basically, don't bring us any grip back to the pit lane. We will be stopping again.
We're on board with the Red Bull of Sergio Perez. The car in front of him is Alex Albon. This is vital now for Sergio Perez that he clears Alex Albon as quickly as he can. Leclerc is coming in for a pit stop. There are dark clouds hovering down by the hairpin, turn 10 of this Montreal track. Leclerc's in the pits. Now Sergio Perez will get DRS behind Alex Albon along that straight. We know the Red Bull is powerful with its DRS, and this overtake should get done. Now will Sergio Perez get this extra speed to help him in his battle with Charles Leclerc? There goes the overtake for Perez. Leclerc now making his way at 80 kilometers an hour and finally able to put his foot down a bit more out of the pits. Perez will make his way towards turn 1 as out comes Leclerc ahead of Sainz and ahead of Perez.
And Leclerc just in front of Sainz. That will annoy Sainz like crazy. But yeah, Albon didn't zigzag down the straight, didn't waste any energy or meters fighting the impossible fight there against the Red Bull of Perez. Just put his car roughly in the middle of the track, left it up to the incredible straight line speed of the Red Bull to do the rest of the work.
As we see Sergio Perez then getting past Alex Albon, whose fight is not with the Red Bull this afternoon. The fight for Sergio Perez is against Leclerc and Sainz, and at one stage the two Ferraris were on the medium tyre, Sergio was on the hard. It's all swapped around a bit now. Karun Chandok's got some news.
Well, they're calling Lewis Hamilton into the pits. They haven't yet called Fernando Alonso. So what does Max Verstappen do? Because, you know, does he pit and give up track position to Alonso? Or does he stay out and risk Hamilton or fresh tyres catching him? This is getting interesting for Red Bull.
It certainly is. The undercut is powerful, unless you're switching onto the hard compound tyres, we're told. That is not going to happen, because Lewis Hamilton's gone onto the medium tyre here. He's going to come out ahead of Nick de Vries in this race, who has been lapped.
Yeah, they'll certainly be doing their sums on the Red Bull pit wall. This has come about because of the safety car, really, in terms of it concertinaed the pack back up. And it is an interesting...
Sergio Perez, more often than not, is the one that gets the faster pit stops at Red Bull, and a lot of that is often down to the driver stopping on the marks accurately or not.
Well, it's all graduated everywhere and videoed, and they will be sent here unquestionably after the race to show the accuracy. It's critical, the accuracy of where you stop, because, you know, people on their knees with incredibly powerful guns and wheels, big wheels coming off, they take a bit of lifting, those wheels, and then you've got to get another wheel on straight onto the axle spindle. And so stopping in the right place is absolutely critical.
I've just noticed here, Sergio Perez has just set the new fastest lap of the race. He's about 3.5 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. Sainz had a fastest lap, Leclerc had a fastest lap, Karun Chandon at Sky Race Control. What does Ferrari do about this in terms of trying to keep Sergio Perez behind them? 2 seconds.
So Sainz will not attack you.
I think we've just heard our answer there.
Yeah, that's basically the plan, is to use Sainz as a buffer to allow Leclerc to just hold on. I mean, listen, from where they started, Ferrari, from 10th to 11th, that's pretty decent, isn't it? To be 4th to 5th, ahead of one Aston and ahead of one Mercedes. So I think they'll take that as a decent haul of points.
Fairly strong message to Carlos Sainz there, isn't it? Or Sainz, as we know him.
Yeah, as we will call him now. So, Sainz is about 2 and a bit seconds behind Charles Leclerc, but once again, he's got a bit more pace in the first sector compared to Sergio Perez. Perez, told, has a possible chance of a podium today. It's not kind of working out for him in that respect. And once again, here's his teammate Martin, leading the race. Perez is about 18 seconds behind him currently, and we've had a safety car in this race. Max on pole for the 3rd consecutive race, and Sergio, as he's lapping the back marker that is Nick de Vries, outside of Q3 for the 3rd consecutive race. Since he started on pole in Miami, his season has started to go a bit southwards, hasn't it?
It has. Go on, Sainz, attack him. Go on. Have some fun. Give us some fun. Hamilton, new fastest lap of the race. So now as the fuel load's going down, they start with about 100 kilograms. It costs you 3.5 tenths per 10 kilograms of fuel to carry it around the circuit. And it's a pretty linear thing in terms of you've got to accelerate, brake and turn an extra 10 kilo. If you gave the driver a 10 kilo weight out of the gym, he would go 3.5 tenths slower around the circuit. I never believed it in the early days, but it is so linear in that respect. But of course they're now getting through their fuel loads.
It's a really good recovery drive this from George Russell. He hit the wall, had to come in for a lengthy pit stop. He was running last at one stage and he's now up into 8th. But I tell you who is absolutely setting the track alight currently is his teammate Lewis Hamilton, since they switched that. Red Bull pit wall.
Yeah.
Alonso here could be just biding his time, thinking, I'd rather have life in these tyres in the last 10 laps. But Hamilton, albeit, he's started the last lap just under 5 seconds behind him, is going to keep Fernando honest, isn't he, for the next few laps?
He is. I wish I hadn't heard that radio call. But, yeah. So, obviously, Verstappen in management mode out front. George Russell is catching his best friend, Alex Albon, one of his friends, I should say.
He's got many.
They've been out jogging together, don't they? They spend a bit of time together. And they're together on the racetrack as Russell recovers, really. And where is he? He's into the 1 minute, just low 1 minute 17 to the moment, about a second off the pace with what must be a bit of an ailing Mercedes-Benz.
George Russell, friends with many people except Simon Lazenby after that lie detector test, to be honest. Let's have some more action between Nick de Vries and Kevin Magnussen, shall we? Those two having their own little battle, aren't they? And sadly for them, in 18th and 19th place.
Yeah, the 3-point turns put them back at the back of the field, as you say.
Logan Sargent's the only retirement from this race, which will be the 2nd driver to retire in the last 4 Grand Prix. Lance Stroll being the other one in Monaco. And we're having a spate at the moment of brilliant reliability. As Alonso, I said Hamilton was going to keep Alonso honest. Alonso just set a fastest lap of the race on the hard tyre. Hamilton's on the medium tyre, and he's now gone and set the fastest lap himself.
You know, I know the safety car intervened a bit, but Verstappen wasn't exactly a million miles out front at that time. But Fernando Alonso has said to us, look, we won't be beaten by 20 or 30 seconds again.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a better car now, and fair dues, he's only 4 seconds behind at this point. I think he was 5 when the safety car came out.
That's right.
So that if we got to add that back in, so we don't kid ourselves. But nonetheless, there's no doubt about it. For me, Aston Martin and Mercedes-Benz and Ferrari, when they don't step on their own
There is
tails,
a bit of a race on behind us, so
I think slowly
people are pushing a lot more than you for the moment.
closing the gap to Red Bull.
It's worth pointing out that if Max Verstappen wasn't actually in this race, this would be a really good scrap for first place. Yeah. Once again, though, all the action's taking place behind a man who, by the way, at the end of lap 46, had led his 200th consecutive lap. So he took the lead on lap 48 in Miami. He hasn't not been in the lead of a race since that moment.
Hamilton's just taken 2 seconds out of Alonso on the previous lap.
Karun, are you watching Fernando on board? 2 secs, Karun.
Okay. You tell me when lift and coast is okay. So stop doing it.
Yeah, we will do, but please keep doing it now. Please keep doing it.
Yeah, I want to win the race, man.
Yeah, but if you run out of fuel, you won't win the race, or run out of brakes, you can't win. What they say, lift and coast. Lift, maybe 150, 200 metres before the corner. Coast, let the aerodynamics slow the car down, and then brake later, but less.
This is where Alonso lost that time, Martin, in the middle sector. He lost 1.4 seconds by taking that little detour around there. They've been on the radio to him to say the wind has picked up. He had a bit of a gust of tailwind, which caused that issue going into turn 9. I have to say, looking out the window, it does look windy, and the clouds have rolled in as well.
Yeah, I mentioned that a few laps ago, down from turn 10. The clouds are rolling in. Wasn't that nice? Pierre Gasly, 11 centimetres from the wall. Our how close to the wall can you go graphic is back once again. That's very close, 11 centimetres. Between 5 and 10, that's super close.
Yeah, I want to win the
Between
race,
1 and 5, that's really close. And after that, it's bang.
And how do they measure that?
They've got a special camera there that can measure distance.
Right.
Or magic, or Harry Potter stood on the outside. I have no idea. I just believe it when I see it.
So Russell's Mercedes is ailing, we know, because he threw it at the wall quite hard, didn't he? And it was a good comeback at the moment for P8. But, you know, Alex Albon's keeping him at bay. That Williams is definitely a step forward, isn't it? No doubt about it.
Alex Albon said on Thursday that the new upgrades that he's running this weekend, Logan Sargent, he hoped would bring them to that midfield pack and fighting for points. It wasn't lying.
I think we're in for some classic Albon defending. You got the straight line speed.
James Irwin is race engineer.
What is a classic Albon defence?
It's where he keeps his car ahead of the one behind him in whatever way he chooses to fight.
Well, he's not been weaving. He's obviously quick down the straights. You can use your battery power in attack and defence. About 160 odd horsepower of it. So there then, Lewis Hamilton has just actually lost 4/10 to Alonso in the last 2 laps.
So the gap between Verstappen and Alonso, about 5.5 seconds. Alonso, we know, is being told to lift and coast, and I'm told he's still being told to lift and coast. Verstappen is just managing it on those medium tyres. But even with the lift and coast, I still think that's really good pace from the Aston Martin. It's such a shame that he is having to lift and coast, Fernando, because we're not seeing the true potential of that car as it stands at the moment. We'll go down to 10 in 2 seconds. Before we do that, let's ride on board with Yuki Tsunoda down that back straight. He's got Nico Hülkenberg ahead of him, but not for long. Yuki Tsunoda powering his way past and up into 15th place. Ted, down to you.
Yeah, for all we know, Crofty, Hamilton has to lift and coast as well. But we haven't heard that on the radio, have we? Right, I've been investigating the Lando Norris penalty for unsportsmanlike behaviour. So two things on this. Well, 2 things on this. Firstly, I thought unsportsmanlike behaviour was a virtue in this game.
Okay.
And secondly, giving Lando Norris a penalty for unsportsmanlike behaviour is like giving a penalty to a puppy for doing a whoopsie in the park. You know, he's the sweetest man on the grid, Lando Norris. What's this unsportsmanlike behaviour? And that's what McLaren are trying to understand as well. I mean, clearly it's for something safety car related, isn't it, Crofty? You think it was for backing up everybody before plunging into the pits?
Potentially.
Potentially. So McLaren... Go on.
We're not sure.
No, we're not sure, and McLaren aren't sure either. So the only instruction they've given Lando, apart from telling him that he's got a 5-second penalty, they haven't told him it's for unsportsmanlike behaviour, is that he has to get a 5-second gap on Lance Stroll, who's behind him. And he's not able to do it, Crofty. Over the last 10 laps, Lando can't pull 5 seconds on Stroll in the Aston behind him.
Because he's rather stuck behind Valtteri Bottas.
He needs to clear Valtteri Bottas, then he's got a half a chance.
We were all in the Alex Albon great defending DRS train.
Ahora sí, estamos entrando ya en la recta final, 19 giros y fracción para que termine este Gran Premio de Canadá. Está ganando Verstappen, aquí están el segundo y el tercero, Alonso y Hamilton. Si esto termina así, Cochito, tenemos 3 campeones del mundo en el podio.
Exactamente, buen trabajo de Alonso y de Hamilton, un poco más cerca de Verstappen que en otras competencias. Creo que Verstappen igual de todas maneras viene regulando un poco la carrera. En un circuito donde no hay un consumo excesivo de neumáticos, es de los circuitos que tal vez menos estrés sufre el neumático, por eso que pueden usar estos compuestos más blandos. Por eso lo que vos decías, Fer, que el compuesto medio acá es el blando en otras carreras, y sobre todo que no tiene un gran desgaste el neumático delantero, no tenés ningún curvón de permanencia de alta velocidad, son más que nada chicanas y frenadas importantes, y lo que más sufre es el neumático trasero, porque sí necesitas buena tracción. Cuando uno empieza a anticipar las aceleradas, acelerar con un poco de ángulo de volante a la salida, no enderezar el volante rápidamente cuando sale de las curvas, el neumático trasero empieza a patinar un poquito, sobrecalentarse, y ese que más sufre.
Bien, veíamos recién a Russell con el DRS abierto aquí en el ataque sobre Alex Albon. Después viene Esteban Ocon que ha perdido un poco en la carrera, ¿no? Llegó a estar sexto cómodo, Juan, y ahora está en el 9º lugar.
Así es, y el Alpine también, bueno, hay que ver las estrategias, ¿no? Pero yo creo que sí puede llegar a terminar tal vez algún paso más adelante, porque Russell para mí sería un milagro que no lo hiciera. Igual Ocon está a un segundo, ¿no? Con un neumático mejor que el del piloto británico y tal vez con algún daño en el auto. Pero me sigue sorprendiendo el ritmo de Ferrari, ¿no? Y Checo va perdiendo cada vez más ritmo con Carlos Sainz, ¿no? Ya son 5 segundos. Entonces, creo que Ferrari, con las mejoras que llevaron a Barcelona y que intentaron por lo menos evaluar aquí y entender mejor, le han dado resultado.
Bien, recién Hamilton fue el más rápido, 15-6 en la última vuelta contra 16-1 de Verstappen y Alonso. Estamos con Lando Norris. Otro que tendría que parar tal vez es Alex Albon, ¿no? Que hizo una sola parada con el Williams. Ahí está Albon justamente, que viene delante de Russell. Esa es la pelea. Tal vez los dos se tengan que ir para los pits y Ocon pueda ganar esos 2 lugares y terminar detrás de Checo Pérez. Ahí está la cantidad de vueltas. Miren, 40 vueltas las gomas de Albon y de Russell. Y faltan 18, 17 y media todavía, 18. Habría que ver si pueden bancarse una paliza de 58 giros esas gomas, ¿no?
Y tal vez que alguno haga estirar este neumático duro un poco más y monte un blando sobre el final también.
Miren cómo viene este trencito. DRS abierto para Lando Norris. Norris está 11º, está fuera de los puntos en este momento, y Piastri también, ¿eh? Los 2 pilotos habían largado en la 4ª fila. Los hombres de McLaren, lo recordamos, y han perdido bastante, por lo menos hasta ahora. Pero tienen que completarse el combo de estrategias, a ver cómo queda cada uno ubicado en esta fila.
A diferencia de otras pistas, también esta calle de boxes es más corta. La entrada es muy rápida y la salida muy directa también. Entonces el tiempo que se pierde en bandera verde en una parada de boxes aquí ronda los 18 segundos, contra unos 22, 23, hasta 24 tal vez en otras pistas. Por eso es que 2 paradas a veces no pagan bien en este circuito y no se pierde tanto tiempo como en otro, donde tal vez perderían unos 4 o 5 segundos más 2 veces, faltando las 2 paradas.
Ocon lo viene mirando por los espejos a Valtteri Bottas, a ver dónde está Valtteri, atrás de él con el Alfa Romeo. Estamos a bordo. Miren esto, pasó Russell, pasó Albon, Russell, Ocon, Bottas, Norris. Estos vienen todos juntos, y después un poco más atrás Stroll, que está 12º, delante de Oscar Piastri, que ha perdido un poquito el tren. Lando Norris viene aquí en este trencito, justo atrás de Valtteri Bottas, tratando de entrar en los puntos. Lando Norris, acá hay 5 autos y acá viene un 6º, Lance Stroll, que no está tan lejos. Después Piastri sí, 4,5 segundos más atrás. Y 2 segundos adelante de Pierre Gasly, vuelta 55, ya hay casi 7 segundos, Juan, de Verstappen Alonso.
Sí, sí, por eso decíamos, ¿no? Administrando Verstappen en control de la carrera. A ver qué le van a decir aquí a...
So we think we're going to have to retire this car. Front left
Bueno.
brake wear is too high. Tell me what you want me to do.
Bueno.
So call the car, just call the brakes down and we'll box end of this.
Claro, problemas con los frenos allí, están muy alta la temperatura, que lo tienen que retirar, así que no era que tenía que parar solamente a cambiar neumáticos, sino que se acaba la carrera para Russell, que empezó de la peor manera, ¿no? Un error del piloto británico, chocando contra el muro, lo hizo prácticamente retirar. No se retiró antes, me parece que tal vez consiguen importante información, así que una lástima, un Mercedes menos. Ya la segunda retiro, ¿no? De Russell en Australia cuando el motor y ahora en esta ocasión.
Efectivamente, bueno, fuera de carrera George Russell sube en una posición, bueno, todos los que venían peleando con él, ¿no? Esteban Ocon subió al 8º lugar, Valtteri Bottas al 9º y Lando Norris entra en los puntos en el 10º. 15 vueltas finales de este Gran Premio. 7 segundos, punto 3 la diferencia de Verstappen Alonso.
Se le acerca Hamilton, ¿eh?
Sí, se acerca Hamilton.
Bueno, está pidiendo disculpas, ¿no? Muy bien, porque sabe que cometió un error y tal vez ese incidente provocó tener este problema en los frenos.
Bien, Hamilton se le está acercando a Alonso, ¿eh? Se puso a 2 segundos, punto 3 del piloto asturiano. Tiene mejor ritmo a esta altura, Lewis Hamilton. Eso es Esteban Ocon. Ya está la votación para piloto del día. Verstappen está ganando. Alonso segundo, Hamilton tercero, Leclerc cuarto, Sainz quinto, Checo Pérez sexto, pero muy lejos Checo, a 7 segundos de Sainz ahora. Cochito ha perdido mucho terreno.
Sí, lejos en el tiempo de vuelta. 16-9 para Checo en esta última vuelta contra 15-9. 16-0 en los dos Ferraris. Casi un segundo. No está Checo en el mejor fin de semana. No solamente por el problema en clasificación. No anduvo en ritmo tampoco en las prácticas. Y queda evidenciado que en carrera tampoco está funcionando como quiere el piloto mexicano.
Norris va por Bottas, los dos están en los puntos. Bottas noveno, Lando Norris en el 10º lugar. Y ahí está Russell, lamentablemente para el piloto británico. Se terminó la carrera mucho más temprano de lo que él quería. Pasa Valtteri Bottas y va Lando Norris detrás en la recta más larga del circuito. Aquí viene Albon encabezando este trencito, después Esteban Ocon. Valtteri Bottas, Lando Norris y un poquito más atrás viene Lance Stroll, que está intentando también entrar en los puntos. Veremos si Albon tiene que parar, debería tener que parar. Tiene más de 40, tiene como 43 vueltas en las gomas a esta altura de la carrera. Alex Albon.
Sí, Bottas tiene una sola parada también, a diferencia de Ocon y Norris, que me parece que son los que realmente están peleando por esa posición, por el puesto número 7.
La imagen en la pequeña ventana a la izquierda con Lewis Hamilton, que por ahora tiene el récord, 1:15.396. En la última vuelta hizo 1:15.793. Fue 2 décimas más rápido. Altura de la carrera, Alex Albon.
Está menos 2 segundos, tiene una sola
más rápido que Alonso, ¿no?
Atención, porque si sigue en este ritmo, en 2 vueltas más o 3 se puede llegar a poner en el rango de DRS.
Bien, la pelea será con Alonso de Lewis Hamilton.
Puesto número 7.
Allí por el segundo escalón del podio en este Gran Premio en el circuito Gilles Villeneuve de Montreal, en la pequeña ventana de izquierda con Lewis Hamilton. 58 tiene el récord, 1:15.396. En la última zona de la horquilla, 1:15.793. Fue 2 décimas más rápido. Altura de la carrera, Alex Albon.
Está menos 2.
Amigos, estamos con el trencito de Alex Albon. Esteban Ocon, que lo quiere superar, demuestra el auto por la derecha, pero no puede. Después viene el Alfa Romeo de Valtteri Bottas y un poquito más atrás al Norris, Lando Norris. Después Lance Stroll, que está acercándose a este grupo porque Albon, Cochito, los viene deteniendo.
Exactamente, Stroll viene bien, ya tiene sus 2 paradas, está con el compuesto duro. Giró en su vuelta más rápida, esta última 1:16.7. Tiempos de Checo Pérez, de la Ferrari, viene siendo de los más rápidos dentro del grupo ese del medio.
Hace mucho que McLaren no suma en este circuito. Veremos ahora, aquí estamos con Lewis Hamilton, con Mercedes.
A 1,5 ya, ¿eh?
Hamilton sobre Alonso, mucho más cerca. Alonso perdió ritmo con ese neumático duro. Está a 7 segundos, punto 8 de Verstappen, pero lo tiene encima a menos de 1 segundo y medio. Ahora 1 segundo, punto 3. Nada más, 1 segundo 4 en este momento. A Lewis Hamilton atrás. Hamilton en 1 o 2 vueltas va a entrar efectivamente, como decías, Cochito, en zona de DRS.
Sí, es que por lo demostrado por Ferrari, yo creo que me parece que la estrategia era más sobre el final del compuesto medio que del duro. Bueno, cada equipo tiene su información y sabe lo que hacen, lógicamente, el equipo Aston Martin, pero hay una diferencia de 4 o 5 décimas de tiempo de vuelta entre el C4 y el C3, que vendría a ser el duro y el medio. Y en rendimiento, si no cae mucho ese compuesto amarillo, termina dando mejor resultado, pagando mejor, ¿no? Por eso Hamilton se le viene a Alonso.
Este es Esteban Ocon, vamos a bordo. Adelante está Alex Albon. Mientras tanto, los tres de adelante giraron en 1.15. El más rápido Verstappen, 15.7, 15.9 para Alonso y Hamilton. Alonso volvió a acelerar para tratar de mantener la ventaja con Lewis Hamilton. Pero Hamilton viene con todo, también desde atrás. Seguimos con Esteban Ocon.
Bueno, lo de Albon de todas maneras, ¿no? Poner el Williams ahí con ese ritmo de carrera después de tantas vueltas, más de 40 vueltas con ese compuesto, y sigue manteniendo un buen ritmo de vuelta. Incluso hasta por momentos mejor que Ocon, que Bottas y que Norris.
Sí, tiene 46 vueltas por lo menos. 46, 47 vueltas, ¿no? En la 14 estábamos con el safety car cuando cambiaron las gomas. Llegó Stroll al final de ese trencito también. Fíjense el Aston Martin, el auto verde allí, que se va incorporando a ese tren liderado por Albon. Albon, Ocon, Bottas, Norris y Stroll. Ahora que como pescador va a ir allí a ver si puede lograr algún puntito. Por ahora fuera de los puntos. Si para Albon, todos van a avanzar seguramente. Valtteri Bottas también hizo una sola parada, pero paró muy tarde. Valtteri tiene la goma media, la va a tratar de llevar hasta el final. Que sigue viniendo Hamilton. 1 segundo, punto 7 de Alonso a Hamilton. Aquí está la carrera en el final. Faltan 10 vueltas, falta mucho, Juan, todavía. Todo puede pasar.
Falta mucho y hay que ver eso, ¿no? El drop-off del neumático medio, de tanto apretar, pero lo tiene que intentar, ¿no? Bueno, aparentemente está tratando de solucionar un pequeño problema en el freno trasero. Le dicen que el español Fernando Alonso en el Aston Martin debe estar tratando de controlar ese problema en el freno trasero. Por eso también se le está acercando a Hamilton, aunque se aleja un poquito Fernando, ¿no? Fernando es muy inteligente, sabe cubrir muy bien las posiciones. Vemos que aquí es muy difícil adelantar, ¿no? Salvo Alonso, que lo pasó a Hamilton en DRS, ese trencito de Albon, Fernando, no se pudieron adelantar ya hace varias vueltas. Y lo que me llama la atención del neumático medio de Checo Pérez, que va perdiendo ritmo, ¿no? Tiene la posibilidad de hacer una parada gratis, creo yo, Checo. Si levanta un poco el ritmo, pone el neumático blando hacia el final para, aunque sea, recuperar un punto en el campeonato. Pero tiene a 22 segundos a Albon, ¿no? Podría llegar inclusive a parar, pero bueno,
sí,
tiene que levantar un poco el ritmo, ¿no?
Está a 9 segundos y medio de Sainz, perdió mucho ritmo Checo Pérez.
Sí.
No tiene problemas con
Albon. Si
Albon.
levanta el ritmo si levanta un poco el ritmo, podría inclusive hacer una parada, que es un riesgo también, puede salir mal.
Sí, va a salir atrás de todo ese trencito, va a salir atrás de Stroll, ese es el problema. Va a perder ahí 5 o 6 lugares, 5 lugares, por lo menos no está justamente en este momento para hacer. Tiene que ser, como decía Juan, ¿no? Que levante más el ritmo, que saque más ventaja, pero creo que no tiene goma para eso.
Pero hay algo que no funciona, por eso hay algo que no funciona. Miren el ritmo de Hamilton, pararon muy parecido. El ritmo de Hamilton con el neumático medio y el de Checo, ¿no?
Hamilton está a 2 segundos de Alonso, que recuperó algo de ventaja. Él empezó a sacar un poquito de diferencia. Alonso Hamilton, 2 segundos, punto 1. Ahora,
4 décimas más rápido esta vuelta. Aceleró Alonso, que tiene que empujar. Tiene el neumático duro y puede castigarlo un poco más, que no lo va a complicar sobre el final. Por el contrario, Hamilton va a tener que empujar, pero también cuidarlo de alguna forma, porque tiene que llegar al final. Quedan poquitas vueltas igual. Y la Ferrari está bastante lejos. Leclerc a más de 5 segundos, que de todas maneras vuelvo a destacar lo de Ferrari. Leclerc y Sainz tirando en ritmos muy buenos.
Bueno, le están informando, ¿no? 1.9 Hamilton atrás y dice, sí, lo entendí, déjemelo a mí. Lo tiene bajo control, ¿no? Como bien decían ustedes, quien va a ir por la vuelta rápida y no lo descarten es justamente Max Verstappen. Sí, conservando neumáticos con esa diferencia. No les sorprenda que en la última vuelta o la penúltima vuelta Max Verstappen logre el récord. Se quiere llevar todo.
Yo creo que alguno va a poner el blando. Me parece que Albon, si tiene que hacer una parada más o alguno más tiene que hacer una parada más, puede llegar a poner el blando sobre el final si es que llegan. Por ahí alguno con un blando puede llegar a sorprender.
Bien, aquí estamos con Lando Norris a bordo. Norris décimo, va sobre Bottas, no lo puede capturar, no lo puede pasar a Valtteri. Estamos a bordo. Se acerca el final de la carrera, tira una visera allí por el sector izquierdo, Lando Norris. Entre los pilotos del día, yo estoy entre Leclerc y Albon.
Muy bien lo de Albon, muy bueno.
Albon muy bueno, aunque tenga que parar, que parece que la va a tratar de seguir hasta el final, ¿no? Y ahí peleando y manteniendo el séptimo lugar. Y Leclerc, que también ha hecho una muy buena carrera. Leclerc está en el cuarto lugar, ¿no? Recuerden que había largado décimo finalmente.
Sí, muy bueno lo de Leclerc, lo de Sainz también. Cuarto y quinto, largaron décimo y décimo primero. Bien Ferrari. En la estrategia esta vez, y también lo que decía Juan, es cierto que me parece que hay un paso adelante en el ritmo de carrera. También es cierto que es un circuito particular donde no hay un estrés muy grande de neumáticos, como ya dijimos, no se desgasta tanto, pero por lo menos en este tipo de trazado mostraron un avance importante.
Pero ya tiene 50 vueltas la goma de Albon. Ahí va, fíjense, Norris sobre Valtteri Bottas, le pone el auto a la par y le gana la cuerda allí. Queda Lando Norris adelante, noveno, Lando, décimo Valtteri Bottas. Y ahora quiere aprovechar Lance Stroll también con el DRS abierto. Vienen todos con el DRS abierto ahí. Miren cómo va, Bottas a la par de Lando Norris, pero Norris cuida la cuerda en la última doble curva y allí entra a la recta adelante. Ahora Bottas se tiene que cuidar también de Stroll, que quiere llegar a los puntos y sacarlo a Valtteri Bottas de esa situación. Ahí va Stroll, por afuera no puede. Bien, Valtteri Bottas, que es uno de los grandes veteranos, ¿no? Un hombre de mucha experiencia, muy capaz para mantener la posición allí. Vuelta número 64, sigue la pelea en este trencito, que es el más interesante de todos. Alonso ya estiró la ventaja sobre Hamilton a 2 segundos, punto 9. Aquí está la gran batalla final. Ocon lo presiona a Alex Albon, que mantiene el séptimo lugar. Norris los pasó a Valtteri Bottas, lo pasó recién a Valtteri Bottas. Bottas es atacado por Stroll. Bottas quiere recuperar la posición que le sacó Lando Norris. Estamos en la vuelta número 65 de carrera. Adelante, no hay problemas por ahora para Verstappen. 7 segundos, punto 7 sobre Alonso.
Qué bueno lo de Albon. Sigue Albon con un neumático ya con más de 50 vueltas, aguantando a un Alpine que rinde muy bien, incluso a Norris por detrás con un neumático mucho más fresco, con 2 paradas. Vamos a ver cuánto aguanta el piloto de Williams.
Bueno, ya pase lo que pase, me quedo con esta elección. Sí, ahí, sí. 25% Albon, sin duda, se los viene ganando a todos. Albon, muy bien. Y con un Williams, Juan, además, ¿no?
Sí, gran trabajo, ¿eh? Realmente aprovechando las mejoras que han traído, ¿no? En el auto de Albon, que evidentemente está funcionando. Así que me quedo también con esa votación, ¿no? Por más que tenga que parar o no, lo que ha hecho hasta ahora es fantástico.
Sí, yo creo que ahora intenta ir hasta el final, ya como sea, ¿no? A ver qué pasaba con Verstappen.
No, sí. Ahora no va a parar, se faltan 5 vueltas.
Almost knocked myself out on that curve.
Claro, casi me voy solo en ese pianito, en ese curve.
Está tan aburrido que
se ríe, ¿no? Sí, se ríe, pero bueno, ninguna distracción. No hay que estar exento, ¿no? De alguna distracción, de algún pequeño error, pero lo tomó con gracia, ¿no?
Nubes oscuras, Juana, allí en ese sector, por lo menos lo que enfocaba la cámara.
Y fue el pianito donde también se subió Russell y terminó mal. Ese piano es complicado, es muy alto, hay que tratar de evitarlo. La curva número 9 es la 8 y la 9, es una S muy veloz, donde si agarras la parte de anaranjada, esa que tiene un lomo de burro en el interno, te saca completamente para afuera, por eso hay que tener mucha atención.
Ya estamos en la vuelta número 66 de la carrera. Se acerca el final del Gran Premio de Canadá. Hay 7 segundos, punto 9 de Verstappen Alonso y hay 2.9 de Alonso a Hamilton. Al final lo pudo controlar, Cochito, Alonso a Lewis Hamilton. Venía controlando su carrera. Por eso les dijo al equipo, déjenme a mí.
Sí, es que Alonso con el compuesto duro tenía también la posibilidad de empujar más sobre el final, ¿no? Sabe que tiene un neumático que puede exprimirlo más. Hamilton, por el contrario, intentó, me parece, todo. Y después el neumático empieza a caer en las últimas 5 vueltas.
Se fue de largo Stroll en la horquilla, queriendo acercarse a Valtteri Bottas. Estábamos con la maniobra a bordo, con Lance Stroll ahí seguía, miren, se fue y la hizo ancha la curva. No se fue fuera de la pista totalmente, pero perdió tiempo con relación a Valtteri. Ahora tiene que volver a atacar. Lando Norris va con el DRS abierto para tratar de superar a Esteban Ocon. Miren las nubes negras allí, nubes oscuras. Y allá también se ve en el fondo. Veremos, falta muy poquito. No creo que llegue la lluvia, Juan, ¿no?
No, por ahora no. Inclusive lo está esquivando un poco el circuito. Faltan, nada, 3 vueltas tal vez para las entrevistas y los festejos. Pero por ahora, tranquilidad.
Bien, solo para complicarte la vida en la parte final del trabajo.
The rear wing is loose on the Alpine. It's going to fall off at some point. I think it's pretty dangerous. It's very loose. Understood, we're on it.
Le está diciendo que el ala trasera de Ocon está suelta, ¿no? Que en algún momento se va a salir. Miren cómo se mueve.
Muy peligroso.
Así que está divirtiéndolo allí. Pero bueno, a ver que vuelve a
If this falls off and hits someone, it's going to be extremely bad.
Si se sale, le va a pegar a alguien. Y ese alguien es él, que viene detrás, ¿no?
Además es un mensaje para
peligrosísimo. Sí, sí, seguro. Y adelanta una posición. Pero se está moviendo bastante, ¿eh? No es muy común verlo que se mueva de esa manera.
Amigos, estamos en las 3 últimas vueltas del Gran Premio de Canadá. Verstappen lidera por 8 segundos, punto 8. Puede ir regulando de aquí hasta el final. Alonso le lleva casi 3 segundos, un poquito menos a Lewis Hamilton. Después está Leclerc en el 4.º lugar y Sainz en el 5.º. Como decía Cochito, muy buena carrera de Ferrari, que está enmendando un fin de semana que venía complicado. Se está recuperando. Checo Pérez está en el 6.º lugar, muy lejos de Sainz, a 11 segundos. Fíjense la batalla entre Norris y un Ocon que viene complicado con esa ala trasera que de verdad se mueve, Cochito.
Sí, no creo que se salga. Se mueve, pero dentro de los parámetros controlados, creo yo. Tampoco está perdiendo mucho rendimiento por esa ala. A ver si Norris consigue de todas formas el sobrepaso.
Estamos con Lando Norris, que va al ataque con Ocon. Adelante de Ocon viene el increíble Alex Albon, que está 7.º con una sola parada en la carrera. Cuando salió el safety car allá por la vuelta 13, 14 de este Gran Premio. Miren la cantidad de vueltas que tienen las gomas allí de Alex Albon. Pasa este trío ahora que está peleando allí. Perdió este tren, lo perdió Valtteri Bottas. Están Albon, Ocon y Norris peleando. Valtteri se quedó más atrás y un poco más atrás viene Lance Stroll queriendo la posición de Valtteri Bottas, que es la última que entrega puntos en este Gran Premio de Canadá para el Campeonato del Mundo. Giro número 69. Dos vueltas finales, señores, de este Gran Premio de Canadá. Verstappen gana por 9 segundos, punto 7. Hamilton se resignó, ya está a 3 segundos, punto 2.
Y Pérez va a buscar el récord de vuelta. Alguno con el neumático blando, como decía, lo iba a hacer, lo iba a probar. Pérez tenía parada gratis del puesto 6. Y va a intentar ese récord en la parte final.
Bueno, veremos. Checo se fue a los pits. Checo se fue al pit. Tiene 27 segundos, tiene una parada gratis, Juan.
Sí, decíamos que tenía que hacerlo. Era lógico. Y con un Red Bull tiene que buscar subir, subir por lo menos con un punto lo ayuda en el campeonato, ¿no? Ya que no pudo escalar posiciones, así que tenía que hacerlo y bueno, y más teniendo en cuenta que Albon va perdiendo ritmo, los mantiene detrás, pero ya la diferencia se agrandó con Checo, ¿no? Entonces era gratis sí o sí.
Bien, salió Checo. Este es Max Verstappen, señores, la última vuelta para el campeón del mundo. 4.361 metros para terminar este Gran Premio de Canadá. Y ha dominado otra vez de punta a punta, Hizo la pole. Está ganando la carrera, liderando todas las vueltas. Lo único que le falta es el récord, ¿no? Como para llevarse otro Grand Slam.
Esta vez no va a ser el récord. Y es cierto que se achicó un poco la diferencia. De más de 20 segundos que vemos siempre, hay menos de 10 esta vez con respecto a Alonso. Le costó el récord de vuelta también con respecto a Hamilton en igualdad de condiciones. Me parece que están un poco más cerca.
Y el safety car ayudó también. Para la menor diferencia, ¿no?
Es cierto. Están, de todas maneras creo que están un poquito más cerca. Se lo ve también a Checo más complicado, más lejos. Hay que ver cuánto está regulando Verstappen. Eso no lo sabemos.
Bien, parte final de la carrera. Aquí está Max Verstappen con el RB19 número 1. Liderando el campeonato del mundo y ganando la 6ª fecha sobre 8 en este campeonato mundial 2023. y lo que es más importante, alcanzando las 41 victorias de Ayrton Senna a los 25 años. Ayrton a los 25 años y un mes ganó su primera carrera, el Gran Premio de Portugal de 1985. Ahí está Verstappen, lo espera la bandera a cuadro, señores. Victoria incuestionable para Max Verstappen. Ganó de punta a punta después de haber ganado también la clasificación por más de un segundo sobre sus rivales. Impresionante fin de semana otra vez de Verstappen y de Red Bull, un equipo que está bien en todos los aspectos. Segundo llega Fernando Alonso, gran trabajo de Alonso, sube al podio de nuevo, y tercero Lewis Hamilton, podio de lujo con 3 campeones del mundo.
Qué podio, Fernando, impresionante, qué talento en esos 3 escalones. Verstappen dominó de una forma contundente durante todo el fin de semana, sacando el viernes, que fue un viernes atípico, después con lluvia, con piso seco, y ahí va, mirá.
Miren Ocon y Norris, viene para el récord Checo Pérez. Mientras tanto, Norris lo quiso pasar a Ocon, no pudo, le queda la recta larga, lo tiene que intentar con el DRS, pero tiene DRS también Ocon. Va rápido Norris por el sector externo, tiene la curva a la cuerda, la tiene Ocon, pero Norris se mete adelante, no puede, se van a chocar. Norris va por afuera, termina Ocon finalmente en la posición atrás de Albon. Chapó Albon, piloto del día. Checo Pérez hizo el récord, 14.481. Destructor récord, les bajó, no sé, le bajó un segundo al récord anterior, casi un segundo. Ahí está, señores, final del Gran Premio de Canadá. Gran trabajo de Verstappen, gran trabajo de Alex Albon con el Williams y una sola parada. Séptimo, aquí está Verstappen.
Max, another good day at the office.
Yeah, not bad that. And also 100 win for the team, so that's a great result.
Yeah, well done, mate. That is, as you say, a century for the team. So fantastic, and thank you for producing that race victory for us today. Well done, mate.
Yeah, was maybe not our strongest track with the conditions, but it's still a very good result. It's all good.
Bueno, allí diciéndole primero, Giampiero Lambiase hace muy buen trabajo en la oficina en el día de hoy, no estuvo mal, dice Max Verstappen, y también haciendo referencia a esa victoria número 100 de parte del equipo, Christian Horner, que no es uno de los circuitos más fuertes para nosotros, y sin embargo logramos una buena victoria, así que como bien dijo, no estuvo mal.
Well done, mate. Well done. We were nursing a little
Muy
problem
bien
there,
hecho.
but you did a great job. I think without that little problem, Verstappen was doable.
I knew. Didn't want to say anything. Yeah, well done, guys. I'm happy. We gave everything again. I'm super pissed off.
Yeah, well done, mate. Great job.
Bueno, allí también el equipo diciéndole a Fernando Alonso que pese a ese problema, cómo lo controló, que hizo una muy buena carrera. Y él dice que está feliz, que está contento. A ver qué dice Hamilton.
Nice work, Lewis. So that's a P3, mate.
Buen trabajo, tercera posición.
But great job today. Great job this weekend. Let's keep this consistency up. It's awesome. Thank you.
Bueno, gran trabajo. Mantengamos esta consistencia y felicitando a todos y agradeciendo, Hamilton. Así que los 3 pilotos felices, Porque se suben al podio, Fernando.
Los 3 campeones.
Un Alonso que... Exactamente, qué podio,
de lujo este podio del Gran Premio de Canadá. Ahí se viene el festejo de Max Verstappen, que ahora le lleva 69 puntos en el campeonato a Checo Pérez. A Checo se le acerca Alonso, que se puso allí muy cerquita, a 9 puntos de Checo Pérez. Y Hamilton, que está a 24 puntos también del piloto mexicano. Empieza a haber lucha por el segundo lugar del campeonato entre Pérez, Alonso y Hamilton. Y ahí está la felicidad del equipo Red Bull, de Max Verstappen, comodísimo líder del campeonato mundial. 69 puntos de diferencia sobre su compañero Checo Pérez. Ahí están los abrazos, la sonrisa del doctor Marco y también Alonso, que está feliz. Alonso parecía que se complicaba en el final, Cochito, con Hamilton, pero tenía un poco de resto el asturiano.
Exactamente, y vuelve al podio después del bajón. Únicamente su carrera de casa, por desgracia para Alonso, la única carrera que no subió al podio, si no me equivoco,
la única.
La de Barcelona. Después en todas estuvo dentro de los 3 primeros.
No, en Baku no subió.
En Baku, perdón.
En Baku no subió.
Sí.
Fue Leclerc.
Es verdad.
Lo que pasa es que sacó 15 puntos por el tema de la carrera sprint, Bueno, ahí está el saludo entre Alonso y Hamilton, 2 grandes campeones del mundo que se dieron con todo, en la pista. Alonso lo superó en la pista a Lewis Hamilton. Después parecía que Hamilton lo podía volver a superar cerca del final, pero tenía un resto guardado allí.
Me gustó la radio, la radio cuando le dicen está Hamilton a 1,5 segundos, 1,4 segundos, déjemelo a mí, dijo Alonso, con mucha seguridad, mucha confianza que tiene.
Bueno, ahí está Max Verstappen, el ganador, y en la gráfica, piloto del día, súper merecido, Alex Albon, sin duda, sin duda. Alguno puede cuestionarlo, pero yo creo que Albon, con un Williams, terminando séptimo y aguantando a todos los que venían atrás, fue piloto del día en este Gran Premio de Canadá.
Piloto del fin de semana, Fer, te diría, porque lo que hizo también en la clasificación en el día de ayer, dominando la Q2 en una condición dificilísima, y con un Williams es para destacar. Después en la Q3 tal vez no tuvo la suerte, no estuvo en la ventana correcta, en el mejor momento de adherencia del circuito, pero muy destacable lo de Albon con ese auto durante todo el fin de semana.
Así es, bueno, aquí está Alonso, allá está Verstappen, un podio impresionante, lo decíamos Juan, 3 grandes campeones del mundo en lo más alto del podio de una carrera que siempre nos gusta, el Gran Premio de Canadá en este circuito. Jenson Button va a hacer las notas.
Así es.
Congratulations, Max. Yet another victory,
Max.
from the lights to the flag. How are you feeling?
Yeah, of course, very happy right now. It was not a very straightforward race because the tires were not really getting in their window. It was very cold today compared to Friday, and we were sliding around quite a bit. But yeah, we made it work. And yeah, to win again today, win the 100 Grand Prix for the team. That's yeah, incredible.
Yeah, you must have a pretty special feeling about that. You know, you've worked with this team for many years. 100th win. How does that feel to take that for the team here?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I never expected to be on these kind of numbers myself as well, you know, so yeah, we keep enjoying, we keep working hard, but today has been a great day again.
Did you expect a bigger challenge from Aston or Mercedes here, or this is pretty much what you expected here in Montreal?
Personally, I expected more or less what we had today, but it was, yeah, like I said, really difficult to just keep the grip and the temperature into the tires because the grip was disappearing very quickly. That's why maybe the gap was not that big, but yeah, we had a few safety cars here and there, but yeah, overall we won, that's the most important.
And lastly, this is always a very special race to come to. A lot of fans here for the sport. They've been through a lot this weekend with the weather. Have you got a message for them?
Yeah, I mean, they're so passionate about the sport. Also yesterday with the rain, they were just hanging in there, so that was great to see. And yeah, we love coming here, and hopefully we can do this for a long time.
Congratulations, Max.
Espero poder hacer esto por muchos años, ¿no? Que permanezca Canadá en el calendario. Y ahora Fernando, hombre de palabra, me dijo ayer que nunca más se baja del podio hasta fin de año.
You've got a few fans here, Fernando. Was that the race you expected?
Muchos fanáticos, ¿no?
Probably, yes. I think we were hoping to challenge a little bit more the Red Bull, but we lost a place at the start with Luis, and then yeah, it was a battle with the Mercedes, and Luis was pushing all the race, so I didn't have one lap where I could relax a little bit, so it was an amazing battle.
It was lovely watching 3 multiple world champions going at it, and you had a good little tussle with Lewis out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning I had a little bit more pace, and at the end I think Luis had a little bit more pace.
Al principio necesitaba conservar un poco más de ritmo.
It was very demanding race,
you know. Difícil, una carrera muy demandante.
Today.
We heard you had a few issues, you had to do a little bit of lift and coast. It's always frustrating because you want to push maximum. Was that a fuel issue or was that a rear brake issue?
I don't know really, they didn't tell me, so maybe it was not to make me worry too much, but I don't know, I felt the car okay, but I was just following the instructions, so yeah, hopefully that means that we have a little bit more pace, so next one, putting more pressure on Max.
Y la próxima meter un poco más de presión justamente a Max. Simpático Alonso, ¿no? Defendido. 70 vueltas de clasificación, dijo, ¿no? Y ahora todo muy
These guys are doing it for us, and a lot of support here for Formula One, a lot of support here for you, Lewis. This has always been a pretty special track for you. Not the result you want entirely, but you were working hard out there.
Yeah, it's honestly been a great weekend for us. I think we're slowly chipping away. I think the Astons took a little bit of a step ahead this weekend when they added the upgrades. But we're working on bringing some more moving forwards. But to just have this consistency and be up on the podium here in Montreal, which is such an incredible city, and we've got such a great crowd here every single year without fail. So big thank you to everyone here.
You seem to be in a really good place. You know, there's progress being made with the team. You yourself giving it your all. It's such a pleasure for us all to see out on track. What are the areas you still think you need to improve to really take it to Aston and then finally Red Bull?
Yeah, I mean, well, firstly, quite an honor to be up there with two world champions. I was really excited to be third and just trying to be in that mix. But unfortunately, we didn't have the pace today. I think where we struggle is, I mean, we knew that this weekend this wouldn't be our strongest circuit, as we struggle in the lower speed corners particularly, and that's really where I was losing to Fernando and to Max just on traction out of turn 2, out of pretty much every corner. But we've got a lot of work to do, just add rear downforce to the car and a little bit more efficiency. But we're chipping away, as I said, and I do believe we will get there at some stage. But yeah, Max was a little bit long, but I think our paces are a little bit closer today, so we're going in the right direction.
Great work. Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bien, 4 campeones, Juan, porque el que hizo las notas también es campeón del mundo.
Fer, Juan, para explicar un poquito esto del lift and coast que hacía mención también Juan durante la carrera y que le preguntaban a Alonso en la competencia, esto es una técnica que usan muchos pilotos para poder reducir el consumo de combustible. Los autos estos nuevos autos de motores híbridos llevan un tanque de combustible más pequeño, de tan solo 100 kilos, y a veces no llegan al final de la carrera, o a veces por estrategia prefieren ir con un auto menos cargado de combustible y pierden menos tiempo en el total de la carrera levantando